We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I'm the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am very excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Deborah Dash. She is a tech startup specialist focusing on emerging companies up to IPO. Deborah, thank you so much for being here. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for our listeners, including your pronouns and when you were younger. Do you remember how exactly you answered the question? What do you want to be when you grow up?
Sure. So my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I've been in the human resources space for about 20 years. I started out in very traditional companies, worked my way up. And since about 2006, I've specialized in the tech startup space, helping companies go from before proof of concept from launch to right to IPO. So that's what I've been doing. And when I was younger, what I wanted to be was a lawyer. And so after college, I got a job at a law firm. And I suddenly realized that lawyers are adversarial, and that was not a good fit for me. So I left that job, took a job in business, and applied and went to Fordham Business School at night to get my MBA. And that was much more to my liking because business is about puzzle solving and mostly about positive outcomes, because the first thing they teach you in business school is about the bottom line, and you want that to be good.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that and a little bit about the work that you have been focused on over the last few years as well. And you worked in so many and helped co-create so many company cultures, and it's a dynamic thing. A lot of positive things come out of it as well. What is your philosophy around the unique role of specifically executives and leaders to really model company culture?
So most entrepreneurs that I've worked with come into this space and they know very well what their product is, who their audience is, who their customer is. Um, and I think they also have an idea of the kind of company that they would like to run. So when I come into a company, the first thing I do is that I ask questions. I ask them about the values that they're bringing to the company. What kind of a company do they want to create? What kind of diversity do they want to see? What kind of a work-life balance? Sometimes very difficult for entrepreneurs to or founders to answer, because work-life balance for them doesn't really exist when it's their product and their baby. And what kind of a culture do they want to see? What kind of benefits do they want to offer to their company? And benefits are not just the health benefits that we're used to, the health and welfare, but benefits in terms of, time off or days of service. How engaged do they want to be with their environment as a company? What are the principles that guide them as a person, and what principles do they want to guide their company?
Yeah, I think those are important questions to ask because everybody will have different answers in terms of their values, what are they focusing on, defining on what they mean by company culture and the environment they aspirationally want to create. Do you have an example of, a CEO led or a company value that really helps lead the organization towards its mission?
Yes, I think that when founders, CEOs, top management put a value on their employees, I think that they transmit a lot of information and a lot of the company culture. And I think that from there it will grow organically. So I think that when companies make a commitment to their human resources, I think that what they do is they're making a commitment to their employees. And often human resources is seen as a cost center. So there's not a lot allocated. And I think that has been changing over the years. I mean, many, many years ago, we were personnel. which doesn't tell you much about what we do. It sounds just like a file clerk. And then it was human resources or human capital, which is, I think, getting warmer. And I think you're really getting hot when you call it that it is a people and culture function. And I like to look at what I do when people ask me. I tell them that I am the same way a company has a customer success, to go along with their product. I tell them that I am an employee success manager, which I think ultimately for me is the best way to describe what I do. So the commitment in terms of capital, which allows someone in my position to offer training, offer opportunities to do other things, experience other things within the company. Those are the kinds of things that I think are most important.
I think that you're right. There's been a huge evolution to not only the language, but just the importance of really investing in human resources, people, the success of employees. And I think, we're talking about values, we're talking about leadership commitment. How does that manifest in programs and policies and tactics as well? I know you've shared that you've helped really build out the first ever handbook at organizations and really initial policies that set the tone for what an organization values as well. From that experience, where do you start in prioritizing what to codify first?
So going back to your earlier question, when I ask the CEO or the founder what their values are, that gives me a really great place to start. And also what their commitment is to human resources, because handbooks have to have a certain standard language and certain standard policies. But one of my favorite points to talk about is PTO and days of service. So a lot of companies give sick days and vacation days because there's a concern that, if it's unlimited PTO, people will take advantage of it. And I can tell you that I've done many audits, and I find that when you have unlimited PTO, people take less time off. And we really need to encourage them to get away from the office. So I'm a big proponent of treating employees like adults, giving them the unlimited time off, and letting them use that time as they see fit. And I see that as a separate issue from or a separate item from days of service. I think that as we've seen in the last couple of years, we don't live in isolation, even though COVID did make us live in isolation. But what it did was it made us realize how important it is to be part of a community. And I think with the different topics and different issues that came to light with Black Lives Matter, that it also brought us into the world where we were seeing that we must engage. And I think we must engage with the world that we work in and the world where we sell our product. And I found that during the summer, when people were out on the streets asking for diversity and equity, that it was something that employees came to me and said, we'd like the company to make a statement. And we'd never been a political company or made political statements. We were pretty much across the board, just open. We were user-generated content, so anybody could upload their opinion. But it became important, and our CEO wrote a statement, sent it out to everyone, and had them edit it or add their comments before she sent it out. And I think it was important because it gave us a sense in our work from home venues, a sense of community, a sense of purpose, and a sense of commitment to the environment that we work in.
Absolutely. We can't be thinking, how we show up at work is really affected by what is going on in our community, what is going on out in the world at large, and really having that expectation, as you were talking about, from employees to their organization to say, we really want to be seen, heard, and understood by you, showing up for people, meeting them where they are. I want to ask a little bit more about kind of the time you mentioned in terms of the increased days of service we've been seeing that some organizations are offering in their policies. Why is it really important to think about incorporating days of service into a company culture? What is it a reflection of?
So I think what it again, it's a statement that the company makes about the importance of everyone examining what's important to them and making that statement available and public to the company, what they're going to work on. So we encourage, in the companies I've worked in, and when I set up the policies for that, I always encourage people to do, there are two ways to handle it. One is they can decide what's important to them, and use some of the days of service. But normally I have put together committees to decide if they want them to be all solitary, or they want them to be, some of the days of service to be acted upon by the entire company. So I think it's important for people to have, to value things besides the corporate bottom line, to understand that it's important to do things and to get outside of ourselves and to help, and to understand that we're not just selling a product, we're also representing our companies when we go out into the wider world. So it's a win-win for the individual to be able to participate in something that they feel strongly about, or the company to participate in something that everyone feels strongly about, and for the company to say, we understand where we fit in the ecosystem of companies.
It's another way to really build that personal connection to an employee as well, talking about what is important to them inside and outside of work, and building out a space where you can take time to really work on a cause or an initiative as well. It definitely does send a signal internally and externally. And it's something that you can talk about with your teammates, your colleagues, potentially your manager too. I know in our kind of pre-conversation as well, you've shared that you've helped bring on those managers and directors to a variety of companies. And sometimes that means, as a manager, having hard conversations that could lead to conflict, which is not necessarily a bad thing. One study found that 39% of folks reported being trained or really coached in how to handle or navigate workplace conflict. How have you helped resource folks, especially those managers, to have hard conversations?
So the number one, I think, reason when you approach someone, I'm a very big proponent of promotion from within. And there are times that I've approached people and they've said, I'm not interested in being a manager. And I find that the reason they give me most often is that they just don't want to have to tell people things that maybe are what they would consider to be unpleasant or difficult. So, and for a long time, we hire people for the skills that they bring to the company. So it may be marketing or sales or coding. We don't necessarily bring them to the company for their what has been called soft skills. And I don't call them soft skills. I call them essential skills, because these are skills that you need every day in your life, and that your work person and your social or personal person are not different entities. And so when I talk to people about managing people who have become managers and have not really dealt with a difficult situation, generally they come to me with the issue, and I will ask them how they would like to handle it. And I will tell you that people's intuition, for the most part, is very good. They're close to the situation, they know the person, and they really know what the best solution is. It may need tweaking and some work, but their gut is generally correct. And then they will follow up when they talk to me. They'll follow up with, oh, but I don't know how to say that to the person. And I'll say to them, what you just said to me was pitch perfect. And that's what you need to say to the person that you're going to talk to. Talk to them like you're talking to me, like you're talking to any other adult. And it's often hard. I always tell them the first time will be very, very difficult. And the second time a little difficult, but then it will be incorporated into your behavior, that you will speak to people in a calm way, in a realistic way, as an adult, as a fellow adult and colleague. And I often, I will also tell them, and I probably should have a t-shirt made that says, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So often when I work with managers who are going to have difficult conversations, we talk about how to approach how to open the conversation. And I encourage people always to come in with a neutral statement, like, tell me about what's going on. Because if you approach someone in a way that's challenging or negative, they don't hear another word you say after the first sentence. And I think everybody has the ability to have conversations that what we might consider, we want to be liked, so we don't want to give bad news. But it's not about, they need to take that away. What I tell them is, it's not about being liked, and it's not about giving bad news. It's about having a conversation that will have an impact on someone's life, that, whether it's about more mentoring that they need, more training that they need, more courses that they need to take, or maybe they're just not in the right position. But it's an opportunity to really understand what's going on. And so it's not really conflict. I look at it more as informational, where you're having, and I think there is a tendency to infantilize people when we go to talk to them. We sort of, especially during annual reviews, we tend to not want to say anything negative. But I think that, the reason that we have mentorship and courses is so that we can make people better at what they do. And we need to have the opportunities to get that information, so we know what we need, what the deliverables of that manager are to the people who are his direct or her direct reports.
Yeah, I definitely, to your point as well, once you start navigating those conversations, you practice in terms of really effectively asking those open-ended questions, as you were talking about too, information gathering. It's an important skill that you need to continue to cultivate. In terms of questions, when you are bringing on these new managers or directors, is there something that you always ask to see kind of that skill or potential there?
Well, I always ask, when I talk to people, again, you're interviewing them to find out about their skills, but also to see what kind of a cultural fit they're going to be, because hopefully you have a very good sense of the company that you work with and the people that you work with. So I ask the same question towards the end of the interview of every single candidate that I speak with, whether they are coming in for an entry level and they've had summer internships, or they are coming in to interview for a C-suite position. And I always ask people if they could take a string and they could put it at the bottom of their job experience, and they could pull it all the way through to the top. What would be the common denominators that would come along with that string? Because people come to me with with backgrounds where they've had time off, or they've worked for a lot of different companies, or they've changed careers. And so I'm interested in why they went to work. I'm more interested not in why they left companies, which I think is not a question that I'm very fond of asking, but why they went to certain companies, why they took the job that they took. What was it that attracted them? Because we self-select to environments that we are interested in, that we're curious about, or that we know that we're going to flourish in, or that challenge us. What is it? And to me, that's that question. If someone has thought about that, and they may not have thought about it before I've asked it, but having that moment to think about it and pull it through, for me, tells me that they have some insight into what makes them tick. And that's, that will make you better at everything that you do, I think, if you are able to shine that light inward for a moment. For me, I would say that every company that I've worked for, whether it's been a large company, and I started out working for a very large company, mine has always been that the companies have been very entrepreneurial. That challenges me. I love working with the people that are passionate about what they do. I love people that are flexible, and I love people that are open-minded. And so being in entrepreneurial companies has been, even though I've worked in every different industry that you could think of, that has been my guiding light. That has been my common denominator. And everyone, I will guarantee you, if that question gets asked, everybody who thinks about it will find that common denominator and be able to tell you what it is.
Yeah, you want to be able to reflect, to really understand what has motivated you at different points of your career as well, what that common thread is. You want someone on your team who's going to be that culture addition and really want to participate in the community as well. I'm sure that you have many of these, but if you had to recall one of them, what is one of your proudest accomplishments in this work, in this industry?
So I love what I do. I think that working with people is, there's nothing more rewarding than working with people, especially and companies, where people are starting their careers, and to see them flourish. And they may not stay with your company over the long haul, but to see them go off and be successful. And I stay in touch with a lot of people. And it's so gratifying to have someone say, when I approached this situation, I remembered something that you said to me, and that was very helpful. So, it's very nice to be to see people's success, to see people grow, and to see them accept more and more responsibility, and know that it's an integration of both their business acumen and their skills and their ability to work with their colleagues.
I love that answer. I think that is something that I also think about too, in terms of things that you remember that mentors or managers have said, folks in your career as well, and things that you've said to others. Deborah, is there something that I didn't directly ask that you would like to share with folks listening, or would you like to underscore any key takeaways you hope people bring with them?
So I think that one of the most important, or at least one of the biggest issues for me, is how to manage people and how to give feedback. And there are many platforms out there that allow us to do our feedback online, where you can actually collect data. And data is very important. It tells us how successful we're being in meeting certain metrics, but not all metrics. So one of my pet grievances is when, and I encourage, and when I talk to managers or when people are promoted, I tell them it's essential that they set up one-to-one meetings. And of course, it was much easier pre-COVID. Now it has to be scheduled on Zoom, and it's not quite as, I think, not quite as personal. But one of my pet peeves is when managers cancel the one-on-ones or reschedule them for weeks hence. And I say that's not acceptable, because what you're telling that person is that everything is more important than them. And even your stars, the people that just shine and are doing well, you still need to have that one-on-one. So you never cancel something without rescheduling it. And it has to be in the same week in my book. And you sit down, and that's your time, even if it's a short conversation, to say thank you, what a great job you're doing, and what else can I, as your manager, do for you? What training would you like? What did you learn about what you were working on that may have prompted you to say, oh, I'd like a little more interest. I'd like to learn a little more about that. Maybe they say to you, I would like to be a manager someday. And you say, great, let's get you some training on being a manager. And then you may have your moons. And it's especially important that you ask the right questions of your moons, because they're sort of the reflected light of the team, and they may be struggling. And that is, your one-on-one with them is essential to find out where they're struggling. Hear from them where they're having problems and see whether they need a mentor, whether they need training and development. What is it? What assets can you put at their disposal that communicate that the company is interested in their success, that the company is interested in them being able to feel good about the job that they do, and you use that with your metrics, but you don't use it in place of that. And I think as we move from we move back into hybrid, where people are working in the office and outside, that you should schedule those in person, because you learn so much more when you sit opposite someone than when you sit opposite a screen with someone. So I encourage managers, I almost insist upon it, that managers have one-on-ones and that they don't cancel them. Canceling them is really taboo in my book, because it sends all the wrong messages about the company's commitment, and it sends the wrong message about your interest in them. Whether they're a star or a moon, they still need to know that you're looking at what they're doing, you're interested in helping them, and that the company is interested in helping them and invested in them, not just engaged with them in terms of having a group night where you have pizza, but having a real conversation about the journey, their career journey. And that is, to me, essential. And that's what makes companies successful.
That's a pet peeve of mine as well, when somebody moves around the one-on-ones, especially with your manager, or they, reschedule it 3 weeks out as well. One-on-one time is really valuable. Deborah, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Of course, and as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in both employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood. I know it's a requirement for the business to really succeed overall. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.